Welcome back to another exciting session of our CISSP study group. I'm B-Dubs, and I'm absolutely stoked to have all of you here today. Whether you're on the path to the CISSP certification or just passionate about cybersecurity, you're in the right place. Your dedication to learning really inspires me, and I'm excited to explore today's topics together. Last time, we covered Domain 1, Objectives 1.7 and 1.8. Don't worry if you've missed any previous sessions. I've put together a playlist that you can access anytime to stay caught up. Let me share that link with you right now in chat. Now, we have a lot of ground to cover today to finish up this first domain. So hang on tight, this ride might get a little bumpy. We will be focusing today on risk management, threat modeling, supply chain, and security awareness. Specifically, we're going to be finishing up objectives 1.9 through 1.12. These objectives, as we've said before, are absolutely fundamental. 1.9, understand and apply risk management concepts. 1.10, understand and apply threat modeling concepts and methodologies. Then we have 1.11, apply supply chain risk management SCRM concepts. And finally, 1.12, establish and maintain a security awareness, education, and training program. Think of this first domain as the strategic thinking behind security. We're learning how to make smart, informed decisions about security investments and priorities, not just reacting to problems. It's about being proactive and building resilient security programs. This isn't just about cramming information for a test. We're focused on building real, practical security knowledge that you can apply in your career. We will take these concepts and break them down into clear, actionable insights that will stick with you. And trust me, we'll have some fun while we're doing it. All right, Objective 1.9 is all about understanding and applying risk management concepts. This is truly the bedrock of effective security practice. So what is risk management? It's fundamentally about being responsible and making smart choices for your organization's security. It's a structured process of identifying potential security threats and vulnerabilities, assessing the potential impact and likelihood of those threats, then prioritizing which risks are most critical and need immediate attention. And finally, economically applying resources to treat, mitigate, monitor, and control those prioritized risks. Think about a house. Your house is your asset. Risk could be a fire, burglary, storms. Risk management helps you decide how to protect your house with smoke detectors, insurance, strong locks, in a way that makes sense for your budget and your risk tolerance. Organizations are just like houses, but on a much larger scale. They have vast and complex assets, face numerous risks, and have limited resources. Risk management provides the roadmap to answer a critical question. With limited resources, where do we focus our security efforts to get the most effective protection? For a massive global e-commerce company, risk management helps them decide where to invest their security budget across millions of transactions, terabytes of customer data, and a global infrastructure. What are the highest risks and how do we address them most effectively? The risk management process follows 3 key steps: value, risk, and treatment. The very first step is understanding what you are trying to protect. What are your organization's assets, and how valuable are they to the business? We're talking about data, systems, infrastructure, intellectual property, brand reputation. We need to prioritize these assets. What are the most critical and valuable ones we need to protect first and foremost? This process is called asset valuation. Once you know what's valuable, the next step is identifying what could potentially harm those assets. What are the risks? This is called risk analysis. We systematically analyze threats, vulnerabilities, the potential business impact if a risk materializes, and the probability or likelihood of it actually happening. After analyzing the risks, we need to decide what to do about them. This is called risk treatment. We choose the best response for each identified risk. Avoid, transfer, mitigate, or accept. This is where we select and implement our security controls. Let's look into asset valuation a bit further. This initial step, determining the value of your assets, is absolutely foundational to effective risk management. We primarily use two approaches for asset valuation. Qualitative analysis is the subjective judgment approach. We use descriptive categories like low, medium, or high value. It's based on expert opinion and business context, without assigning hard dollar values. It's quick and relatively easy, great for a high-level overview and relative ranking. For example, quickly classifying customer financial data as high value, internal employee data as medium value, and public-facing marketing materials as low value. Then we have quantitative analysis. This is the numbers approach. We attempt to assign concrete monetary values to assets and potential losses. It's more objective and precise, but it can be complex and time-consuming, especially for intangible assets like reputation or customer trust. For example, getting precise financial figures for every aspect of a data breach impact can be very challenging. Pure quantitative analysis is often difficult in practice, and a hybrid approach combining quantitative, where possible, and qualitative judgment is frequently used for a more practical and realistic assessment. Moving on to risk analysis. This is where we systematically examine the threats, vulnerabilities, potential impact, and probability of risk materializing against our valuable assets. Remember the four key components: threat, vulnerability, impact, and probability or likelihood. A threat is any potential source of harm or danger that could exploit a vulnerability. Threats can be broad categories like environmental events, such as floods or storms, human actors like hackers or insider threats, or technical failures like system outages. An example of a significant threat is the ongoing increase in sophisticated cybercrime groups conducting ransomware attacks against healthcare organizations. A vulnerability is a weakness or a flaw in a system, process, or control that a threat can exploit. Think of a software bug, a misconfiguration, or a lack of employee security awareness. A prevalent vulnerability right now is unpatched software. Attackers are actively targeting known vulnerabilities in outdated software systems that organizations haven't patched in a timely manner. Impact is the negative consequence to the organization if a threat successfully exploits a vulnerability. Impact can be financial, a direct financial loss or fines. It can be reputational, damage to the brand or loss of customer trust. It can be operational, a business disruption or a system downtime. Or it can be related to compliance with regulatory penalties. A large-scale data breach at a major retailer illustrates impact with significant financial losses due to breach response, customer notifications, legal fees, and severe reputational damage impacting future sales. Probability or likelihood is the estimated chance that a specific threat will actually exploit a given vulnerability and result in a negative impact within a specific time frame. This is often expressed as a percentage or a value like high, medium, or low. The probability of a vulnerability being exploited depends on factors like the threat actor's motivation, their capabilities, the discoverability of the vulnerability, and the presence of existing security controls. For instance, a publicly known, easily exploitable vulnerability in widely used software will have a higher probability of exploitation compared to a very obscure vulnerability in a niche system with strong existing security controls. Remember, a simplified way to conceptualize risk is that risk equals your threat times your vulnerability, which will then show you the probability of a vulnerability being exploited by a threat. Then you take that and multiply it by the impact. The core concepts here are always going to be threat, vulnerability, and some measure of potential consequence or impact. Let's quickly review some key risk management terms that are essential to understand and use consistently. A threat agent is who or what can cause harm. This could be external hackers, malicious insiders, nation-state actors, or even natural disasters. A threat is the potential for harm itself. An attack is the action taken to exploit a vulnerability. A vulnerability is the weakness that can be exploited. Risk is the potential for loss or damage resulting from a threat exploiting a vulnerability. Asset. This is anything of value to the organization. Exposure or impact. This is the negative consequences if a risk materializes. Then we have countermeasures, safeguards, and controls. These are the security measures we will implement to reduce risk. Inherent risk is the initial level of risk that exists before any controls or treatment measures are implemented. This represents the raw, untreated risk level, assuming no protective measures are in place. And then residual risk is the risk that remains even after implementing controls. Remember that we can never eliminate all risk completely. Risk appetite is the level of uncertainty that an organization is willing to accept in pursuit of its strategic objectives. Think of it as how much risk the organization is comfortable taking on to achieve its goals. Then you have risk tolerance, which is the specific amount of risk an organization is willing to accept for a particular initiative or business unit. While risk appetite sets the overall approach, risk tolerance defines the acceptable variation around a specific objective. Now let's talk about the annualized loss expectancy, the ALE calculation. This is a key concept in quantitative risk analysis. ALE helps us put a financial number on a risk over a given year. The formula is ALE equals SLE times ARO, where SLE equals AV times EF. Now, that was a lot of acronyms, I know that. So let's break this down. Asset value, or AV, is the financial value of the asset being assessed. Your exposure factor, or EF, is the percentage of that asset value expected to be lost in a single occurrence of the risk event. Then single loss expectancy, or SLE, is the expected financial loss from a single occurrence of the risk, calculated by multiplying your asset value and exposure factor together. Then we have the annualized rate of occurrence, or ARO, which is the estimated number of times a specific risk event is expected to occur in a single year. Now we can find the annualized loss expectancy, or ALE, by multiplying the single loss expectancy and annualized rate of occurrence together. This provides us with the total expected financial loss from a specific risk per year. So why do we use the ALE? This is a tool for cost to benefit analysis of security controls. If a security control costs less than the ALE, it might be cost justified from a purely financial perspective. However, remember the limitations. ALE heavily relies on estimations, particularly for the ARO and EF, and pure quantitative analysis is often difficult. Qualitative judgment and contextual understanding are always necessary to supplement the ALE and make realistic risk-based decisions. While the ALE provides a useful quantitative metric, real-world risk decisions often involve incorporating qualitative factors that are hard to monetize, such as reputational impact, ethical considerations, and legal ramifications. Also remember, a very expensive control might be justified even if the ALE is lower, if the risk is to human life or critical infrastructure and not just financial loss. So we've identified and analyzed risks. Now, what are our risk response and treatment options? We have 4 options here. We can avoid, transfer, mitigate, or accept. By avoiding, we can eliminate the risk altogether by stopping the risky activity or choosing a less risky alternative. If using a certain cloud service presents unacceptable security risk, simply avoid using that service. However, risk avoidance often comes with opportunity costs, meaning you might miss out on business benefits or financial gains by avoiding the risk. Risk avoidance is usually reserved for extremely high risk where the potential consequences are unacceptable. If we transfer the risk, we shift the financial burden of the risk to a third party, most commonly through insurance. Cyber insurance policies can cover costs related to data breaches, incident response, legal fees, and regulatory fines. However, while you can transfer some of the financial risk, remember that you generally cannot transfer the accountability for the risk itself. Your organization remains ultimately accountable for protecting customer data, even if you have cyber insurance. By mitigating the risk, we can reduce the risk to an acceptable level by implementing security controls. This is the most common approach. Deploying firewalls, implementing strong authentication, patching vulnerabilities, conducting security awareness training. These are all mitigation strategies. Think of installing sprinklers in your house to mitigate the risk of fire damage. We aim to reduce either the likelihood of the risk occurring or the impact if it does, or ideally both for a layered approach. Risk mitigation is about reducing risk to a level that aligns with the organization's risk appetite and risk tolerance. And finally, we can accept the risk. We decide to live with the risk without implementing any additional controls. This is appropriate when the cost of mitigation outweighs the potential impact, or when the risk is inherently very low, or when no cost-effective mitigation is available. Risk acceptance must be a conscious and informed decision. This is made by the risk owners and senior management who fully understand the potential consequences. This is not simply ignoring the risk. For example, accepting the low risk of a minor denial of service attack against a non-critical, public-facing informational website might be a valid risk-based decision. Keep in mind, risk ignorance is not a risk treatment strategy, and this is a sign of negligence, not risk management. Now let's move on to different types of controls. We categorize controls in a few different ways. First, by action type. Directive controls guide or mandate desired behavior and compliance goals with policies. Security policies themselves, such as acceptable use policies and standard operating procedures, are directive controls, guiding the employee actions. Think of a speed limit sign. It directs you to drive a certain speed, and there could be consequences if you don't. Deterrent controls discourage undesirable actions by making them less attractive or increasing the perceived risk of getting caught. Security cameras and warning signs can act as deterrents. Think of a beware of dog sign. It discourages intruders from entering the area with a dog that could attack them. Preventative controls stop incidents from occurring in the first place. Firewalls blocking unauthorized network traffic, access control lists restricting access to sensitive data, and encryption, protecting data at rest are all preventative controls. Think of a lock on your front door. It protects unauthorized entry. Detective controls identify security events after they have begun or occurred. Intrusion detection systems, or IDS, security information and event management, or SIEM systems, audit logs, and security monitoring tools are all detective controls. Think of a burglar alarm. It detects unauthorized entry after the event occurs. Corrective controls minimize the impact by remediating the damage after a security incident. Incident response procedures, system backups, and anti-malware software removing the malware from the system are all corrective controls. Think of a fire extinguisher. It minimizes the impact of a small fire so it doesn't grow into a larger fire, causing more damage. Recovery controls restore systems and operations to a normal state after an incident. Disaster recovery plans, business continuity plans, and system re-imaging procedures are all recovery controls. Just like insurance, these controls help you recover after a major loss. Compensating controls provide alternative security measures when primary controls are not feasible or effective. Implementing a host-based intrusion prevention system on a critical legacy system that cannot be easily patched is a compensating control to address vulnerabilities that preventative patching controls cannot fix on that specific system. Compensating controls are often used to bridge security gaps or enhance defense in depth. These should never be permanent solutions and should be reviewed periodically to see if a primary control could be implemented. A truly complete control system often involves layering preventative, detective, and corrective controls at minimum for a more robust defense. This is known as defense in depth. Another critical categorization is by categories of controls. Keep in mind, this is a different way to categorize controls than separating into types by the action of the control. That being said, controls can have both a type of control and fit into one of these categories. This can sometimes be confusing, but remember that control types are based on what the controls do, and control categories are based on what the controls are. Let's review each of these categories. Administrative or management controls are policy-driven and procedural controls. Security policies, standards, procedures, security awareness training, background checks, risk assessments, and incident response plans are all administrative controls. They are focused on managing risk through policies and human actions. Logical or technical controls are implemented using technology. This could be hardware and software. Firewalls, intrusion detection systems, encryption, access control lists, multi-factor authentication, and anti-malware software are logical or technical controls. They use technology to enforce security. Logical and technical may often be used interchangeably, but logical controls deal with the software component, while technical controls deal with the hardware component. Physical controls are tangible security measures you can physically touch. Fences, locks, security guards, CCTV cameras, man traps, biometric scanners, environmental controls like HVAC or fire suppression, and server room physical access controls are all physical controls. They protect physical assets and facilities. Another example could be security guards patrolling a data center. Those are physical controls. There's two more important terms here you should understand: safeguards and countermeasures. Safeguards are proactive controls. They're designed to prevent security incidents from occurring. Safeguards are primarily directive, deterrent, preventative, and compensating controls. Their goal is to reduce the likelihood of a risk event. Countermeasures are the exact opposite. They are reactive controls, and they're designed to detect and respond to security incidents that have already begun or occurred. Countermeasures are primarily detective, corrective, and recovery controls. They focus on minimizing the impact of a risk event. When we're selecting and implementing controls, they must be functional and provide assurance. Functional effectiveness means that the control must work as intended and reliably perform its designed security function. A firewall must accurately filter traffic based on the configured rules. Encryption must effectively protect data confidentiality. Any malware software must reliably detect and block malware. Functionality is about the control's security capability to perform its intended purpose. Additionally, we need to be able to demonstrate and verify that the control is working correctly and consistently over time. This is assurance. We achieve assurance through activities such as regular security testing like vulnerability scanning and penetration testing, as well as security audits, continuous security monitoring, and incident response drills. Assurance is about building confidence that the control is reliably and consistently functional and effective in the real world. Effective security controls are both functional and provide demonstrable assurance. Now, choosing the right security controls is a balancing act. We want strong security, but also usability, cost effectiveness, and alignment with the business objectives. Let's review some key criteria for selecting controls. First, security controls should enable the organization's business objectives, not hinder them. Controls should facilitate business operations, not create unnecessary roadblocks or impede innovation. A control that completely blocks all employee access to the internet might be very secure, but utterly impractical and detrimental to productivity for most organizations. Then we have to consider that the cost of implementing and maintaining a control should be justified by the risk reduction it provides. Remember the ALE and cost-benefit analysis here. We need to choose controls that provide a reasonable return on investment, or ROI, from a security perspective. Spending excessively on a control for a minor risk is not good use of limited security resources. For significant risk, we should aim for a complete control approach, layering preventative, detective, and corrective controls for defense in depth. Multiple layers of security provide redundancy and increase the likelihood of detecting and preventing attacks, even if one layer fails. Finally, as we discussed on the previous slide, our chosen controls must be functionally effective and provide ongoing assurance of their continued effectiveness through testing and monitoring. To ensure security controls remain effective, we must measure control effectiveness using metrics and embrace continuous improvement through the PDCA cycle. This is the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. We can use metrics to provide data-driven insights into control performance, but remember that different audiences will need different metrics. Senior management might want high-level risk reduction trends, while security teams are going to want those detailed technical metrics. The Deming cycle, or PDCA, is the foundation for continuous improvement in risk management and control effectiveness. First, we plan the security controls to be implemented based on risk assessment, business needs, and compliance requirements. Then we do, by implementing the planned security controls in systems and processes. Next, we will monitor and check if the implemented controls are working as intended, if they are effective in reducing risk, and if they are configured correctly. We can use various metrics to measure this performance. And finally, based on the check phase findings, we will act by taking action to improve the controls. This could be refining configurations, implementing new controls, or revisiting the initial risk assessment as needed. This action step then feeds back into the plan phase, restarting the cycle of continuous improvement. Risk analysis guided by the PDCA cycle is not a one-time event, but an ongoing iterative process. Risk assessments should be reviewed and updated not just annually, but whenever significant changes occur in the organization or within the threat landscape. This could be a major acquisition, adoption of new cloud technologies, emergence of a significant new threat, discovery of a critical vulnerability, or changes in regulatory compliance mandates. They should all trigger a risk analysis review and potential updates to the risk matrix. To provide structure and best practices for risk management, organizations use risk management frameworks. These frameworks provide a systematic, repeatable, and comprehensive approach to risk management. Some key risk management frameworks include the NIST SP 800-37, the RMF, or Risk Management Framework. This framework provides a step-by-step process, a detailed control catalog with NIST 800-53, and comprehensive guidance. This framework is US-centric, but it's widely adopted around the world. The ISO 31000 focuses on a principles-based, broad applicability to all risk types. It's a flexible and internationally recognized standard. The COSO Enterprise Risk Management Framework focuses on enterprise risk management, or ERM, with a holistic organizational risk view and an integrated approach covering financial, operational, strategic, and security risks. ISACA also has a risk IT framework. It focuses on specific risk management and aligns IT risk with business value and risk appetite. It has a strong emphasis on cybersecurity, as well as aligns with COBIT and COSO. For the CISSP exam, you should prioritize the NIST RMF Revision 2. You will want to deeply understand the NIST risk management framework and its 7 steps, which include: first, prepare. Prepare the organization for RMF implementation. Establish context, define roles, develop a risk management strategy, lay the groundwork for effective risk management. Second is categorize. Categorize your information systems. Identify systems, their purpose, information they process, and system boundaries. Understand what you are protecting. Third, select security controls. Choose controls from a catalog like NIST 800-53 based on your risk assessment and system categorization, tailoring controls to specific needs for your organization. Consider different control types and assurance. Fourth, implement. Implement the selected security controls. Configure and deploy controls within systems. Document implementation details in security and privacy plans. Thorough documentation is key here. Fifth, assess. Assess your implemented security controls. Determine if controls are implemented correctly, operating effectively, and meeting security requirements. Develop and execute a security assessment plan, and then document your findings. Sixth is authorize. Authorize system operation. Senior management reviews the risk assessment, controls, remaining residual risk, and authorizes or denies system operation. You will need a formal acceptance of residual risk by a responsible official for a defined period of time. This should be a time period that expires so you can reassess. You should never just accept risk indefinitely. And the 7th and final step is to monitor. Monitor your security controls continuously. Ongoing monitoring of control effectiveness. Track weaknesses against POA and M, which is your plan of actions and milestones. Adapt your controls as needed. A continuous monitoring program is essential for maintaining security over time in a dynamic environment. This exam objective 1.9 is a lot. Risk management is a foundational concept to the entire security program. It's about value, risk analysis, and risk treatment. It's a continuous PDCA cycle. Remember, plan, do, check, act. Using frameworks like the NIST RMF for structured guidance. It's about making informed, risk-based, and cost-effective security decisions aligned with the organizational risk appetite and risk tolerance. Okay, risk management is a large and foundational topic, but let's transition to our next objective, threat modeling. Objective 1.10, understand and apply threat modeling concepts and methodologies. Okay, cool. So what is threat modeling? Threat modeling is a vital technique within the risk management process. It provides a detailed and systematic approach to threat identification. Threat modeling is a structured process to identify, enumerate, and prioritize threats relevant to a specific system, application, or asset. It's about proactively thinking like an attacker to uncover potential weaknesses in attack paths. Think of it as a structured security brainstorm. There are also various software threat modeling tools available to assist with this process, such as the Microsoft Threat Modeling Tool and OWASP Threat Dragon, which can help automate diagramming and threat identification. So why should we threat model? It improves risk analysis by providing a more granular and comprehensive threat picture, especially for complex systems. It helps identify threats early in the design phase, known as proactive threat modeling, or in existing systems, referred to as reactive threat modeling. This all leads to a more informed risk treatment decision and more effective security controls. It helps build security in from the beginning, rather than bolting security on at the end. For example, systematically identifying threats for a complex web application or a critical infrastructure control system requires a structured methodology like threat modeling to be thorough. Today we'll focus on 3 key threat modeling methodologies: STRIDE, POSTA, and DREAD. Each of these provides a different perspective on threat modeling. Let's first take a look at STRIDE. STRIDE was developed by Microsoft. STRIDE is a widely used threat category focused methodology. It helps systematically brainstorm threats by categorizing them into 6 types, using the acronym STRIDE. S is for spoofing. This is an authentication violation where the threat involves impersonating another user or entity. T is for tampering. Here we have an integrity violation. Tampering is unauthorized modification of data. R is for repudiation, which is obviously a non-repudiation violation, denying responsibility for your actions. I is for information disclosure. This is a confidentiality violation where the threat has unauthorized access to information. D is for denial of service. This is an availability violation, disrupting access to services. And E is for elevation of privilege, an authorization violation where the threat gains unauthorized elevated access rights. Let's look at an example using STRIDE. Let's use threat modeling for a payment processing system. So spoofing. How could an attacker spoof a legitimate customer or merchant? Maybe an account takeover or session hijacking. And then tampering. How could payment data be tampered with? On-path attacks altering transaction amounts, or database injection, modifying transaction records. Those are examples of tampering. Repudiation. Can users deny transactions? Maybe there's a lack of transaction logging or insufficient audit trails. And then information disclosure. Could sensitive payment card data be disclosed? There could be vulnerabilities in data storage or transmission. Insecure API endpoints. Moving on to denial of service. Can the payment system be taken offline? Maybe it gets hit with DDoS attacks targeting payment gateways. Or maybe there are resource exhaustion vulnerabilities. And then finally, elevation of privilege. Could an attacker gain administrative control on the payment system? This would be exploiting vulnerabilities in system administration interfaces. Or maybe there's some privilege escalation flaws. This is the mindset and thought process you should have while walking through a STRIDE threat modeling exercise. Now let's take a look at PASTA. And no, this isn't spaghetti, but PASTA stands for the Process for Attack Simulation and Threat Analysis. PASTA is more attacker-centric and risk-focused. It aims to model attacker behaviors and prioritize threats based on business risk. It's more strategic and detailed than STRIDE, and often used for complex, high-value systems and insecure development lifecycles. PASTA's strength is its deeper consideration of business objectives and alignment of security efforts with the overall business strategy. PASTA is a 7-stage threat modeling methodology. First, define your objectives. Understand the business context and core business goals the application supports. Also, understand the inherent business risks and regulatory compliance needs. If we look at a healthcare application, the objectives are patient data, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and there's some HIPAA compliance. Second, clearly define the technical boundaries and scope. Map the complete technology stack, infrastructure, application code, and data flows. Understand all the components involved. Create a detailed inventory of technologies and dependencies. And third, deeply understand data flow and component interactions. Map the data flow through the application. Identify the data sources, destinations, transformations, communication channels, and create data flow diagrams, also known as DFDs. Fourth, provide a comprehensive threat analysis. Identify threats relevant to each component in data flow. Review past security incidents, known vulnerabilities, industry threat intelligence. You could also go back and use STRIDE in this stage to categorize these threats. Fifth, identify vulnerabilities in application design, architecture, code, configurations, and infrastructure. Correlate vulnerabilities to threats identified in stage 4. Determine if vulnerabilities enable threat exploitation. And sixth, create attack models and attack paths. Simulate realistic attack scenarios. Attacker steps to exploit vulnerabilities and realize threats. Determine threat viability and exploitability. Model attack chains. This is how attackers can combine vulnerabilities for complex attacks. And finally, the 7th step is to conduct risk and impact analysis of identified threats vulnerabilities, and attack models. Prioritize risk based on business impact and likelihood. Develop remediation plans for high-priority risk. Risk acceptance may be considered here for lower-risk vulnerabilities after conscious, risk-based decision-making. PASTA provides a very structured, in-depth approach, which is valuable for complex, critical systems and integrating threat modeling into a secure development lifecycle, or SDLC. And finally, we have DREAD. DREAD is not a threat identification method, but a method to rank the severity of the identified threats. This methodology is often used in combination with STRIDE or PASTA. DREAD helps you prioritize remediation efforts by assigning a severity score to each threat. DREAD is an acronym for 5 factors used to assess threat severity. D is for damage potential. This is the severity of damage if the threat is exploited, using a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is minimal and 10 is catastrophic. Consider the financial, reputational, legal, operational, and safety impacts here. R is for reproducibility. How easy is it to reproduce this exploit? Again, use a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is very difficult and 10 is easily reproducible or automatable. Consider the attacker skill level needed and exploit complexity. E is for exploitability. How difficult will it be for an attacker to exploit this vulnerability? Use a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is very difficult and 10 is easily exploitable. Consider the attacker skill, tools required, and complexity. A is for affected users. How many users will be affected if the threat is realized? Still using a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 means a few users and 10 is a large user base. Consider both the internal and external users impacted. D for discoverability. How easy is it for attackers to discover this vulnerability? Use that scale from 1 to 10 again, where 1 is very difficult and 10 is easily discoverable or public knowledge. Consider if the vulnerability is public or easily found by scanning. For each threat you identified using PASTA or STRIDE, you should assess and score each DREAD category from 1 to 10. Then you calculate the average DREAD score, which is the sum of all scores divided by 5. Higher DREAD scores indicate more severe threats that should be prioritized for remediation. DREAD provides a structured, objective way to rank and compare threat severity. Now let's shift gears here to social engineering. We're threat modeling the human element now. We've focused on technical threats, but social engineering targets people directly. Social engineering is manipulating people to take actions or reveal confidential information through deception and psychological manipulation, not technical hacking. It's a major threat because humans are often the weakest link to security. Even the strongest technical security can be bypassed if an attacker tricks an employee. Social engineers use various manipulation tactics. Let's look at a few common ones. Intimidation involves creating fear through threats or coercion. An attacker might threaten job loss or blackmail to force compliance. For example, if you don't give me access, I'll report you to your supervisor. Attackers often use deception by providing false information or impersonating others. A common scenario is pretending to be IT support. Hi, I'm from the help desk. I need your password to fix your account or update this software you have. Rapport building is a subtle tactic where attackers build trust over time. They might act friendly and helpful only to exploit that relationship later. Think of someone who befriends coworkers on social media to gather information. Urgency involves creating artificial time pressure and is very effective. Attackers push their victims to act quickly without thinking. Your account will be deleted in 1 hour unless you verify your credentials now. By impersonating leadership figures with some type of authority, attackers exploit our tendency to obey this authority. They might pose as the CEO, saying something like, "This is urgent. I need you to wire funds immediately." Scarcity plays on our fear of missing out. FOMO. Attackers create fake limited time offers. Only the first 10 employees get this bonus. Act now. Finally, a trust or consensus tactic leans on the fact that we often follow what others do. Attackers exploit this by claiming everyone else is participating. For example, 90% of your colleagues have already updated their passwords this way. Now that we know how attackers might manipulate the human element, let's take a look at some common forms of social engineering attacks. Let's talk about phishing, one of the most common social engineering attacks. Attackers send mass emails appearing to be from legitimate sources. They create fake websites mimicking real ones and include malicious links or attachments to steal credentials or deploy malware. Spear phishing takes phishing to a more targeted level. Instead of casting a wide net, attackers research specific individuals and craft personalized emails that are much harder to detect. They might reference real projects or colleagues to appear even more convincing. Whaling specifically targets the big fish, or whales. This is your C-level executives and other high-value targets. These attacks are highly sophisticated and often involve significant research into the executive's communication style and business relationships. Now moving on to mobile threats, smishing is similar to phishing, but it uses SMS text messages instead of emails. You might get a text message appearing to be from your bank with an urgent link. These are particularly dangerous because people tend to be less suspicious of text messages. Phishing takes place over the phone. Attackers might impersonate tech support, your bank, or even the IRS. They use voice calls, often with spoofed caller IDs, to trick you into revealing sensitive information. Pretexting involves creating an elaborate scenario or story. The attacker might pose as a new employee needing urgent help, or a vendor requiring immediate payment verification. They use emotional manipulation to bypass normal security procedures. Baiting is like leaving a trap. Attackers might drop USB drives in your parking lot labeled salary information or confidential. When someone plugs it in out of curiosity, it installs malware. And finally, let's discuss physical access attacks. Tailgating is when someone follows closely behind an authorized person through a secured door. Piggybacking is similar, but it involves social interaction. Hey, could you hold the door, please? I forgot my badge. Both bypass physical security controls through social manipulation. There's many ways attackers can exploit this human element, and these are just the common ways. But how can we prevent these types of attacks? How do we mitigate social engineering attacks? We can mitigate social engineering attacks primarily through awareness, training, and education. We must build a security-conscious culture, train the employees to be skeptical, and not only learn how to recognize red flags, but learn how to start looking for them in the first place. Let's review some additional practical mitigation steps for these social engineering attacks. We should implement strict identity verification for all requests, especially those sensitive ones. Do not rely solely on caller ID or email display names, as these can all be easily spoofed. Require mandatory callback authorization for any voice or text requests for network changes or sensitive actions. Always call back using verified contact information from official sources, like the official company website, and not from the requester. For emails requesting sensitive information from banks or known entities, always verify their legitimacy out of band. This means that you contact them via official, verified channels, such as their website or a known phone number, and not with the links or numbers in the suspicious email itself. Use landline numbers when possible that are verified from these official sources. So exam objective 1.10 is all about threat modeling, which is a systematic, attacker-focused way of thinking to proactively identify, enumerate, and prioritize threats. STRIDE, PASTA, and DREAD are valuable methodologies for threat modeling and severity ranking. We can't forget that social engineering is a major threat vector exploiting human psychology, mitigated primarily through awareness, training, education, and procedural controls. Threat modeling should consider both technical and human-based threats. Well, I know we're covering a lot tonight, but bear with me. We're going to get through it all and hopefully come out with a better understanding of these topics. Now, let's shift our focus to supply chain risk management SCRM, which is crucial but often overlooked. Objective 1.11 says apply supply chain risk management concepts. SCRM is about extending risk management to our entire supply chain, vendors, suppliers, service providers, and all external entities we rely on. Security isn't just internal, and we can't forget about the external factors that could affect the organization. So why is supply chain risk management so vital? Modern organizations are deeply interconnected and reliant on external vendors for almost everything. If our supply chain is insecure, we are insecure, regardless of our internal security. Attackers are increasingly targeting supply chains as a weaker link. If you remember the SolarWinds attack, attackers compromised SolarWinds, a widely used IT management software vendor, and inserted malicious code into their software updates. Thousands of SolarWinds customers, including government agencies and Fortune 500 companies, unknowingly downloaded and installed these compromised updates, effectively opening backdoors into their own networks. This highlights the devastating impact of supply chain compromises. Robust risk management must include supply chain risk management. We must apply the same security rigor to our external vendors as we do internally, because vendor security directly impacts our own. Remember, vendor security is your security. Effective supply chain risk management involves due diligence and continuous vendor security monitoring throughout the relationship. SCRM activities are often applied in a tiered approach, with more rigorous assessments and monitoring for critical vendors and suppliers who pose higher risks to the organization. Let's review the key activities involved in supply chain risk management. These are essential steps we need to take to protect our organization from supply chain threats. First, we conduct a governance review. This means thoroughly examining our vendors' security frameworks, policies, and standards to ensure they align with our requirements. For our critical vendors, we perform site security reviews. These are on-site physical audits where we actually visit their facilities to verify security measures firsthand. We also require formal security audits. This means vendors must undergo independent third-party assessments like SOC 2 or ISO 27001. Think of these as a professional security health check. Penetration testing is crucial, especially for cloud providers and software vendors. We need to know their systems can withstand real-world attacks. Every vendor must meet our security baseline. These are our minimum security requirements. No exceptions here. It's like our security ground rules. Before deploying any vendor products, we need to conduct thorough hardware and software evaluations. We need to know that these products are secure before they touch our systems. Vendors must follow our security policies, at least the parts relevant to their work with us. They're part of our security ecosystem, so they need to play by our rules. Before engaging any vendor, we develop a detailed assessment plan. This ensures we evaluate all vendors consistently and thoroughly. We clearly define assessment requirements and responsibilities. Everyone needs to know who's doing what and when in the assessment process. And finally, we use standardized assessment and reporting templates. This helps us compare vendors fairly and track their security performance over time. Vendor security requirements should be defined by the same asset owners responsible for internal security. Supply chain risk analysis deserves equal or greater priority than internal risk analysis. And remember that accountability for security can never be fully outsourced, even when you're relying on third parties. Let's walk through the 3 major risks we need to watch out for when acquiring products and services from vendors. First, there's product tampering. This happens when someone interferes with products between manufacturing and delivery. Imagine someone intercepting a shipment of keyboards and secretly adding hardware keyloggers. They look normal, but they're now recording everything you type. This can lead to system breaches, malfunctions, or even safety issues. Next, we need to talk about counterfeits. These are fake products masquerading as the real thing. In our field, we see a lot of counterfeit hardware and software. While they might be cheaper, they often perform poorly. they can fail unexpectedly, and worst of all, they might have built-in security vulnerabilities or backdoors. And finally, let's discuss implants. These are malicious components deliberately added during manufacturing or distribution. They're designed to be extremely hard to detect. These implants can enable espionage, data theft, or give attackers remote access to your systems. Now let's talk about how we can protect ourselves from these supply chain risks. There are several key mitigations we should implement. First, we need robust third-party assessment and monitoring. Think of this like doing a thorough background check before hiring someone, but continuously. We're talking regular security audits, site visits, questionnaires, and constant monitoring of our vendors' security practices. Next, we establish minimum security requirements. Just like you wouldn't hire someone without certain qualifications, we set baseline standards our vendors must meet. This includes specific security controls and compliance with frameworks, such as ISO 27001 or SOC 2. For services, we use service level requirements with detailed security specifications. This is like a contract that spells out exactly what we expect in terms of security. It covers everything from data protection to incident response, and it forms the basis for our legally binding agreements. On the hardware side, we use something called the Silicon Root of Trust. Think of this as a digital fingerprint embedded on the hardware itself. It ensures secure boot up and helps prevent hardware tampering. Similarly, we use physically unclonable functions, or PUFs. These are unique hardware features that act like a physical signature. It's nearly impossible to create exact copies, which helps us fight against counterfeits. And finally, we require a software bill of materials, or SBOM. Basically, this is an ingredient list for software. Just like you want to know what's in your food, or at least I hope you do, we need to know every component in our software to manage vulnerabilities and ensure nothing malicious sneaks in. Now let's talk about 3 important concepts in vendor management: service level requirements, service level agreements, and service level reports. These are crucial tools that help us manage our relationships with service providers. First, let's look at service level requirements, or SLRs. Think of this as your wish list before choosing a vendor. It's where you spell out everything you need from them, what services you want, what performance levels you expect, and who's responsible for what. This document helps you compare different vendors fairly and make sure security is a top priority in your selection process. Next is the service level agreement, or SLA. This is where your requirements become a legal contract. It covers several key areas, including performance metrics, like how much uptime they guarantee and how quickly they'll respond to issues. It includes who's responsible for what, clearly defining roles for both you and the vendor. Security requirements, specifying exactly what security measures they need to have in place. Legal compliance, making sure they follow all necessary regulations. And then what happens if things go wrong, defining penalties and remedies for security breaches or service failures. Finally, service level reports are your regular checkups. These are usually monthly or quarterly. These reports show how well the vendor is meeting their promises. They're especially important for security because they prove whether the vendor is actually protecting your data as promised. Many organizations also require third-party security audits, like a SOC 2 Type 2 report, to verify vendor security independently. Alright, let's do a quick review for exam objective 1.11. Supply chain risk management is vital. Extend risk management to your entire supply chain. Be aware of product tampering, counterfeits, implants. Implement SCRM mitigations, including third-party assessment, minimum security requirements, security-focused SLRs and SLAs, Silicon Root of Trust, and SBOMs. Remember that vendor security is your security. Accountability cannot be fully outsourced, even when you're using third parties. SCRM is ongoing, dynamic, and critical to overall security. For organizations working within the US DoD supply chain, Remember, there's frameworks like the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC, that are specifically designed for DoD supply chain security. We've covered SCRM. Now let's turn to our final, but arguably most important objective: building a human-centric security program focused on people. Objective 1.12 says to establish and maintain a security awareness, education, and training program. This focuses on empowering people to be a strong part of your security defenses. Technology and policies are crucial, but human security awareness is paramount. So who is responsible for security? The answer is clear: everyone in the organization. Security is a shared responsibility across all departments, all levels, from CEO to intern. It's not just IT or the security team's job. However, simply saying everyone is responsible is not enough. Employees need the knowledge and skills to fulfill their security responsibilities. This is why comprehensive awareness, training, and education programs are essential. They empower everyone to understand their roles in security, gain the necessary skills, and appreciate the importance of security within their daily work and the organizational mission. Without these programs, even the best security technologies can be undermined by human error and social engineering. Now let's talk about 3 key aspects of security education that build upon each other. Each serves a different purpose and audience. First, let's look at awareness. Think of this as the foundation. It's about creating a security mindset throughout your organization. We want every single employee, from the CEO to the newest hire, to have security on their radar. This isn't about deep technical knowledge. It's about recognizing potential security issues in their daily work. You might do this through fun lunch and learns, engaging newsletters, or even those eye-catching security posters in the break room. My personal favorite is running phishing simulations. There's nothing like a fake phishing email to teach people what to watch out for. Moving up a level, we have training. This is where we get more specific and hands-on. If awareness is about knowing what to look for, training is about knowing what to do about it. We're targeting specific roles here, like teaching your firewall administrators how to configure security roles, or showing your developers how to write secure code. HR needs to know how to handle sensitive personnel data, while your security guards need to know proper access control procedures. It's all about practical skills for specific security tasks. And finally, at the highest level, we have education. This is where we dive deep into the why behind security. We're talking about understanding security principles, analyzing threat landscapes, and making strategic security decisions. This level is typically for your security leaders and decision makers. Think formal degrees in cybersecurity, professional certifications like the CISSP, or executive level security training. It's about building the expertise to guide your organization's security strategy. Remember, awareness builds security consciousness. Training develops specific skills. And education creates deep understanding. You need all 3 working together to build a truly secure organization. Let's explore some effective methods to deliver security awareness and training. The key is to make it engaging and relevant for your audience. You want to meet them where they are and speak their language. Let's review the main approaches we use. There's live classroom training. This is your traditional in-person format. It's great because you can read the room, adjust on the fly, and build that personal connection. Perfect for complex topics where you need discussion and hands-on practice. There's live virtual training. Think webinars and online sessions. You still get that live interaction, but now you can reach people anywhere. This is super useful for global teams, so you'll need to work harder to keep everyone engaged. There's e-learning modules. These pre-recorded sessions are your workhorses. People can learn at their own pace, and you get consistent messaging across the board. This is ideal for basic awareness training that everyone needs. Gamification. This is where it gets fun. Turn learning into a game with points, badges, or even leaderboards. I've seen teams get really competitive about their security knowledge in a good way. Security champions, these are your boots on the ground. Find those enthusiastic employees in each department who can be your security advocates. They'll help spread the message and keep security top of mind. And finally, keep the momentum going with a steady drumbeat of security messages. Mix it up with newsletters, quick tips, posters, and events. The key is consistency. You want security to become part of your culture. Let's talk about prioritizing our security training topics. With limited time and resources, we need to be strategic about what we teach. Think of it like planning a curriculum. We want to focus on what matters most to our organization. So how do we decide what to teach first? Well, we use our risk register as our guide. It's like our security roadmap. Let's walk through the key areas we need to prioritize. First, we look at our high-value assets. Just like you'd protect your most valuable possessions at home first, we need to focus on protecting our organization's crown jewels. Next up are our top security risks. If we know phishing is our biggest threat, that needs to be at the top of our training list. It's like knowing your neighborhood has a specific crime problem, so you'd focus on preventing that first. Then we look at our vulnerabilities. These are our weak spots, especially when it comes to human behavior. We need to strengthen these areas through targeted training. And finally, we can't forget about compliance requirements. These are our must-dos. Things like PCI, HIPAA, or GDPR training. These are your non-negotiables. Now, creating the content is just the beginning. The security world is constantly changing, so our training needs to keep up. Here's what we need to watch for. New technologies. We have cloud, AI, IoT, blockchain. These aren't just buzzwords. They're changing how we work and creating new security challenges we need to address. Emerging threats. The bad guys are always getting creative. We need to update our training to cover new attack techniques, from sophisticated phishing to the latest ransomware trends. Policy updates. When our policies change, our training needs to reflect that. It's like updating the rulebook. Everyone needs to know the new plays. And program improvements. We're always looking at feedback and metrics to make sure our training is more engaging and effective. If something isn't working, we change it. Remember, security training isn't a one-and-done deal. It's an ongoing process that needs to evolve with our changing technology landscape. By staying current and focused on what matters most, we can build a more security-aware organization. Now let's talk about how we determine if our security training programs are actually making a difference. We need solid data to prove these programs work and justify their continued funding. Let's look at how we can evaluate effectiveness. First, we can use surveys. We ask participants what they thought about the training. Was it helpful, engaging, relevant to their work? This immediate feedback is valuable. Next, we test knowledge through assessments. Think of it like a before and after picture. We test before and after training to see what people learned and retained. And here's my favorite part: simulated phishing exercises. After training, we send fake phishing emails to see if people fall for them. We want to see fewer clicks on suspicious links and more people reporting these emails. That shows the training is working. We also use interactive presentations with quick knowledge checks built right in. This helps us spot any confusion right away. Let's look at the key metrics we can use to measure the effectiveness of our security training program. These metrics help us understand what's working and what needs improvement. First, we have completion and engagement metrics. Program completion rates tell us if our training is accessible and engaging. We want to see high completion numbers. Feedback participation shows us if people feel invested enough to share their thoughts and suggestions. Next, we have our security impact metrics. These are crucial. The number of security incidents caused by human error. This is our North Star metric. Are we seeing a decrease over time? Security reporting rates. When employees spot and report suspicious activity, it shows they're putting their training into practice. And then we have performance metrics. We track how people's scores improve over time, especially in areas like phishing simulation tests. Multiple course attempts might signal that our content needs clarification or redesign. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we look at behavioral changes. We want to see positive security behaviors becoming natural habits, like employees double-checking email addresses or questioning unusual requests. Remember, measuring these metrics isn't just about gathering data. It's about continuously improving our program and demonstrating its value to stakeholders. When we see improvements across these metrics, we know we're building a stronger security culture. Now let's quickly recap Exam Objective 1.12. Robust security awareness, education, and training programs are essential for building a security culture and mitigating human risk. Everyone is responsible for security, but needs empowerment through knowledge and skills. Awareness, training, and education are distinct, but complementary. Programs must be engaging, relevant, updated, and evaluated for effectiveness. Ongoing, well-designed, and rigorously evaluated programs are foundational and indispensable for a strong, resilient security posture. Alright, as we wrap up our exploration of Domain 1 Security and Risk Management with Exam Objectives 1.9 through 1.12, let's review the key concepts we covered today. First, let's talk about risk management. This is truly the foundation of security. Think of risk management as a continuous cycle. We identify what's valuable to our organization, analyze potential threats and vulnerabilities, and then decide how to handle those risks. Remember the key approaches for treatment. We can avoid the risk completely by eliminating the activity. We can transfer it through insurance or third-party services. We can mitigate it with controls and safeguards. Or we can accept it if it fits within our risk tolerance. Moving on to threat modeling, this is where we put ourselves in the attacker's shoes. We use structured approaches like STRIDE to identify different types of threats, or PASTA to understand the attacker's perspective. And then we can use DREAD to prioritize these threats we identify. The key is being proactive. We want to spot potential threats before they become actual problems. And don't forget about social engineering. Sometimes the biggest threats come through people, not technology. Next, we had the supply chain risk management. In today's interconnected world, your security is only as strong as your weakest supplier. We need to carefully assess and monitor our vendors, set clear security requirements, use tools like Silicon Root of Trust and Software Bill of Materials to ensure security. And finally, security awareness and training. This is how we build a security-minded culture. Everyone in the organization plays a role in security, and we need to build awareness through engaging programs, provide specific training for different roles, and measure our success through metrics and simulations. These 4 areas work together to create a comprehensive security program. Risk management gives us our strategy. Threat modeling helps us understand our adversaries. Supply chain management extends our security beyond our walls, and awareness programs ensure everyone knows their role. Remember, security isn't just about technology. It's about people, processes, and technology working together harmoniously. Alright, we finally made it to the end, and that wraps up today's topics on Exam Objectives 1.9 to 1.12. I know today we covered a lot more than we normally do, so thank you all for hanging in there with me. Remember, you can always go back and rewatch sections, pause, and take notes. These sessions will remain on YouTube so you can watch anytime. Additionally, I will be going back to each one after the live streams to add chapters, so you can visit certain topics. The key here is to understand the concepts, not just memorize the details. Think about how these principles apply in real-world scenarios, and don't forget that managerial perspective. I hope you all saved your questions because it's time to start the after party. This is where we all move over to the Study GRC Discord server and join the dedicated CISSP voice channel for open discussion and answer any questions you have. Don't miss this part. Not only can you dive into deeper discussion within a community, but you might even make some new friends. You don't have to tackle this journey alone. If you're not in the Discord yet, you can go to cissp.britwhite.io for the Discord link. And don't forget to grab your CISSP role when you join, so you can find the dedicated channels. Next time, we'll be moving into Domain 2, which is all about asset security during our live session on Saturday, March 22nd at 3 p.m. Central US time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Discord.